Today, we're diving into a wild story of raw corporate greed, explosive engineering, and a frantic race against time that literally united a continent. In this explainer, we're going to explore how a group of dreamers, speculators, and thousands of incredibly brave workers decided to do something that people genuinely thought was impossible. They were going to stitch the United States together with iron. So, Section 1, The Deadly Journey West. Let's take a look at travel in the 1840s. To truly grasp the sheer magnitude of this achievement, I want you to imagine it's 1840. You desperately want to get from New York to San Francisco. Well, you're looking at life or death stakes with basically three terrible choices. Option 1, hop in a covered wagon, spend 6 grueling months dodging cholera, and drag your entire life over the Rocky Mountains. Option 2 is to take a ship all the way around the southern tip of South America. That takes half a year and pits you against monstrous 10-story waves. No thanks. Or option 3, sail down to Panama, trek through a literal jungle filled with yellow fever, and just cross your fingers that another boat is waiting on the Pacific side. Going west wasn't a fun road trip. It was a massive, dangerous gamble with your life.
Which brings us to Section 2, the Great American Race and the 1862 Pacific Railroad Act.
By the 1860s, the U.S. was a total mess, right? It was being torn apart by the Civil War. President Abraham Lincoln makes this massive gamble. He realizes that if the North and the West aren't physically connected, and soon, the Union might completely collapse. So he signs the 1862 Pacific Railroad Act. The government basically goes to two companies and says, start building, we'll give you land and loans for every single mile of track you lay. Because they were paid by the mile, this created the ultimate high-stakes, multi-billion-dollar game of the floor is lava, but played with sledgehammers, dynamite, and thousands of men. Literally, the faster they built, the more money they made. In this crazy race, two main competitors emerged. On one side, you have the Union Pacific. They started out in Omaha, Nebraska, and headed west across the relatively flat plains. On the other side, the Central Pacific started in Sacramento, California, heading east. It was a race to the middle. But as you'll see, their starting points gave them wildly different geographical advantages and nightmares.
Section 3, Conquering the Sierra Nevada. Let's look at the Central Pacific first.
While the Union Pacific cruised across those flat prairies, the Central Pacific almost immediately slammed into a literal wall of granite. These workers were facing 7,000-foot granite peaks. Just think about the sheer impossibility of hacking through massive mountains without any modern heavy machinery. I mean, there were no steam shovels here at first. It was just men, hand drills, and highly dangerous black powder chipping away at the rock face inch by grueling inch. And when black powder wasn't cutting it, they had to turn to nitroglycerin. This is a highly unstable liquid explosive. The problem with nitroglycerin is that it was so incredibly temperamental, it would occasionally detonate just by being bumped. Right? So these guys were risking their lives every single second they handled this chemical just to carve tunnels through the mountains. To actually pull this off required unimaginable endurance. Labor was really scarce in California at the time, so the railroad hired thousands of Chinese immigrants. And they achieved the impossible. I mean, they were sometimes lowered down sheer cliffs in hand-woven wicker baskets just to drill blast holes. And during brutal winters, they literally lived and worked in tunnels under 20-foot snowdrifts just to keep digging. It's an absolutely incredible feat of heroism by workers who are carving out a future for a country that honestly barely gave them any rights in return.
Section 4, Chaos on the Plains. Meanwhile, let's check in on the Union Pacific.
Because they were building over flat land out east, the Union Pacific was moving incredibly fast, sometimes knocking out several miles in a single day. But chasing right behind that track were these wild, lawless pop-up towns known as Hell on Wheels. These were temporary towns made of tents and cheap wooden structures that literally followed the workers. They brought saloons, gambling halls, and outlaws right to the edge of the frontier. It was the chaos of the Wild West coming to life every single time the train stopped. But we have to acknowledge that there was a severe cost to all this rapid progress. The Union Pacific was cutting straight through indigenous lands, rapidly displacing tribes like the Cheyenne, the Sioux, and the Arapaho. For the U.S. government and the railroad companies, this was hailed as a path of progress. But for the Native American tribes, the railroad acted as a permanent iron barrier. It violently sliced through their traditional hunting grounds and ultimately signaled the end of their way of life. It's a really profound and heavy cost of this expansion that we absolutely have to recognize. Section 5, The Golden Spike. Promontory Summit, Utah, May 10, 1869. After 7 brutal years of digging, sweating, exploding granite, and fighting across the plains, the two competing rail lines finally met. They drove in a ceremonial golden spike to officially join the rails together. And in that very moment, the telegraph operator sent a single word message out to the entire waiting country. Done. The massive, impossible race was over. The frontier was officially closed.
This single achievement totally laid the foundation for our modern world. 6 days. Remember that deadly 6-month cholera-filled journey we talked about at the beginning? Yeah, it was instantly reduced to less than a week. Mind-blowing. This track essentially became the 19th century version of the internet. You could now sit in a fancy dining car and eat a steak while zooming past the exact same mountains that used to kill pioneers. You could ship fresh California oranges all the way to New York. You could mail a letter and actually get a reply in 2 weeks instead of half a year. This permanent connection radically transformed daily life. It stitched distant regions together and turned the United States into a single massive economic engine.
The Transcontinental Railroad shows us the absolute heights of human ambition, along with the complex reality of how we build the future. So I want to leave you with a provocative question. What do you think is the Transcontinental Railroad of our time? Is it our digital networks? Commercial space travel? Let me know your thoughts. If you found this explainer helpful in grasping the sheer scale of this impossible track, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into the history that shaped our world. Thanks so much for learning with me today.